Welcome to Millennium Counseling Center's podcast, where each week we go in depth into all things mental health, addiction recovery, and being our healthiest and happiest self. Enjoy.
You guys all know how much I love a great comeback story, and today's guest brings us an incredible one. I'm thrilled to welcome Sarah Meister to the show to share how her college volleyball team, despite facing major struggles, transformed their culture by committing to a true team-first mentality. Sarah was a standout libero at the University of Missouri, where she helped lead her team to an undefeated 32-0 season and the program's first ever SEC championship title in 2013. Before that, she was a multi-sport athlete at Scripps Ranch High School in San Diego, excelling in volleyball, soccer, and softball. Now Sarah is making an impact off the court as a licensed professional counselor specializing in student-athlete mental health and performance. She serves as the athlete wellness director at Millennium Counseling Center in Chicago, helping athletes navigate both the pressures of competition and their overall well-being. I am so excited to hear her insights. Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I want to talk to you for a couple of reasons. First of all, I love that you are someone who works with athletes and came from sports yourself. Can we start a little bit with kind of your sports journey growing up and how you ended up playing in college?
Yeah, definitely. So originally from San Diego, California, and I feel like I fell in love with sports at such a young age. I remember my mom would try to put me into like dance classes and tutus and all of that. And it just did not sit well. It did not sit right. And so my dad was like, okay, I feel like we got to throw her into sports. I was a super active kid too. And so I remember the first sport I ever played was softball, t-ball, and I loved it. And from there on, I truly just fell in love with like the game itself and just being able to be so active at such a young age too. I dabbled in a lot of different sports growing up. I played soccer, I played softball, and then I found my love for volleyball later on. I want to say it was like 8th grade, freshman year of high school. So I was late. I was late to the game there, but I just fell in love with it so much. And, from there on, at that time too, I didn't know I was good enough essentially to go play in college, but I truly just loved the sport so much. So I was like, okay, you know what? We're going to do this. We're going all in. And so I went all in with it, focused on that all through high school, ended up, being able to get a scholarship to the University of Missouri, played volleyball there for 4 years, best experience of my life. And
okay, we need to go back because I have people who are like, oh, she fell in love with sports and then she played Division I volleyball. Like that, there's a long line that's missing. So at what point did you really seriously think I could play a college sport at that level? Because that's a really high level. Was that driven by you, your parents, your coaches? Like who told you to be that bold?
It wasn't driven by my parents. I will say that. Like they were definitely in huge support of me, wanting to play a college sport if that was an option. I think for the longest time, the focus was more on my academics. But I think what ended up happening is my 8th grade freshman year of high school, volleyball season in the freshman year of high school, a couple coaches saw me and they were like, okay, she's got some serious untapped potential. I will be honest, I did have really good hand-eye coordination. So I give that to biology. And from there on, I felt like I had coaches take a chance on me.
Okay.
But I also had instilled this insane work ethic my whole life. I've been very, very driven. And if somebody tells me I can't do something, I'm really stubborn. So that's it can be a benefit and a detriment at the same time. And so I was like, no, I'm going to kind of shoot for the stars here. If I'm being honest, I don't think I really knew that I was, how do I put this? This is me trying to be a humble brag here, but I don't think I really knew I was that good. And it wasn't until I had other coaches, club coaches telling me that I was like, okay, wait, I have a chance here. I really have a chance. And then I just fell in love with watching all these high level players play. And I was like, okay, could I do this? Like, could I actually do this? And then I ended up on a really, really talented club team my junior year of, my junior year of high school. And we made it to nationals. And I was like, okay, I am like sold. I am in. I was seeing all these other girls commit to universities. And I was like, I want to be a part of this too. So I really just went all in. That's kind of how I've always been. I'm all in or I'm all out. And so I went all in with volleyball, and lucky enough, it worked out.
Okay. I mean, we hear this story a lot, Sarah, that kids just loved their sport. At the end of the day, for parents who are listening, and we say it a lot, if they love it first, they're willing to make sacrifices for it. If they don't love it and we push too hard, they cave. They don't want to sacrifice for something they don't love. So you loved it. And then you had coaches who believed in you. Then you had teammates who were super competitive, and you had the spirit. And there it goes. And were you always a defensive specialist or a libero, or what did that look like?
So I started playing middle, and I'm 5'9.5" to give you context. So they kind of threw me all around, which I was totally okay with. I was like, utility, let's go. I'll do anything, because I truly loved the game. And so I started like middle blocker, and then they threw me outside. So all through high school, I was an outside hitter. There was a couple times I was playing back row, but then I started realizing that in order to play in college as a 5'9.5" outside hitter, I would have to be really good. And I recognized that my passing and my back row defense was actually solid. And so I shifted, I want to say like freshman, sophomore year in my club seasons to playing back row. And from there, it just catapulted a ton. And so, yes, I kind of played all around in high school, as it really depends on the high school you go to. But yeah, I ended up shifting back row, and I just fell in love with it. It's also very technical. Libero is a very technical position. And that was something that was super unique. But I think also that's what drove me, is understanding the technique and really just trying to learn as much as possible when it comes to that. I also was the type of player where I was like throw my body everywhere.
I was going to say, it's a really gritty spot back there,
it's
right?
gritty. Yes.
Okay. I mean, you have to have great feet. You have to have great instincts. You have to be able to, have good coordination and that sort of thing. But is it a thankless job in volleyball to be a libero, or is it really recognized for what it is? And that is, it starts everything.
I think it's changed a lot over time. I think it's being recognized so much more now than maybe it was when I was playing. But that being said, there was still a lot of recognition there, because if you don't have a good passer, if you don't have somebody controlling the back court, like, how are we going to get it up? How are we going to get it up to our setters? How are we going to run an offense, a competitive offense, a fast offense? So I think every position is very important. I think being a setter is extremely important, but you can't set if you can't pass.
That is true. So, all right. So here you go. You go to a faraway place, you go to a big university, and the expectations are very high. And like most athletes who commit to play a college sport, there's a tremendous amount of enthusiasm and excitement and and boom, you are a fall sport. You get there early, you get to campus. Tell me about the first couple months, because you and I both work with athletes, and it is a really hard transition. What was it like for you?
Oh, a part of me, I was so excited to be there and to experience something new. I mean, I was from San Diego, and I feel like I was living in such a California bubble at the time. So being able to go to the Midwest and just experience something so different was so exciting for me. So there was a lot of excitement, nervous energy. And you're right, you get thrown, right? Volleyball's a fall sport, so you're thrown into it immediately. And I was challenged, that's for sure. I'm very competitive, and these girls were incredible. My teammates were incredible. And I was like, okay, there is no way in heck I'm going to be able to start and play. But I was like, I want to. And then maybe this is something I should have highlighted earlier, but I just want to say this too. And this is about the libero position itself. It's rarely 4-year scholarshiped. And if it is, incredible, but it rarely is. And one of the things that happened before I had committed is when I was talking to the coach, he said, we can only offer you a first-year scholarship. It was kind of like a trial period. He was like, we can only offer you a 1-year scholarship. Let's see what happens. Let's see how we do. I remember my parents being like, wait, like, don't you want to have at least 2 years secure, or you should go smaller? And I remember in that moment being like, no, like, I'm going to do it.
That challenge drove you. And you see athletes who crumble under that kind of pressure, but that was on you. You made your own decision. Your parents allowed you to do it. And in your mind, you were like, now I need to earn year 2 from year 1.
100%.
Okay.
100%.
All right.
Yep. And so I walked in there like, okay, knowing, okay, I have this security for a year, but I have to prove myself. I really have to prove myself. I mean, we're all, what is it? We're all like small fish in a big pond. And so it's hard. It's really hard and it's grueling. And this, I mean, it's no wonder why I'm a therapist now, which we'll get to, but it is gritty. And I think the biggest challenge I had to face was the mental resiliency. It really is the mindset. And I had to fight through that all the time, even on the days where I didn't start, even on the days where I flubbed up, even on the days where I was competing at the highest level with peers, with other freshmen, with sophomores, with juniors, with seniors. But I will say something. I really feel strange bragging about. I don't know. Maybe.
By the way, this is a total brag zone, first of all.
Okay, is it?
Number one. And number 2, like, I got to tell you, like, as women, we need to brag more and we need to accept bragging as a really important part of empowering each other. So, girl, this is a braggy place. Everyone listening wants to hear your brag. I promise you that. At the same time, they want to know, when you say it was hard, they want to know that you really faced hard things, because we say it, but people don't believe it. They look at you and they go, oh, really? It was really hard for you? Was it really? So you go and brag, and then you tell us what it was really like down there.
I was going to say the one thing I always stayed true to is, and I don't really know where this came from. Sometimes I try to place it, and I think this started as a kid, but I genuinely always believed in myself. Like, if I believed I was going to make something happen, like, even if the skill set wasn't there, like, that undeniable belief in myself drove me.
Well, I need you to bottle that up and start selling that, because I have some people who will buy that. I think there really is like a innate, it's fed by coaches and mentors and parents and all that kind of thing. But it's interesting. You're not the first person who's told me that same thing. So there's definitely something in that. And there's also this resilience piece where you it's almost like you're embarrassed if you fail, or you let somebody down if you fail. So is that the mindset a little bit? Like, I have to succeed. I don't have a choice.
Yes. So, and this is where you kind of teetering that edge, because there's a bit of that black and white thinking, perfectionistic mindset. I was such a perfectionist. And like I said, I call it the blessing and the curse. And so that was my greatest challenge, was accepting where I was in the moment, even if it's not where I wanted to be, and recognizing that it's a process. It is a process. And of course, having coaches believe in you, it just goes such a long way. I remember my assistant coach, like, she really, Dan Young, like, she always has a place in my heart, and the head coaches too. Like, they were incredible. Wayne Krecklow, his wife, Susan, and Scotta Morton, who was our sports psychologist, which I can talk about in a little bit. And she didn't come on until, I believe it was my sophomore year, but they really pushed me in a lot of ways. But I think it's because I allowed myself to be pushed. Like, I was okay with that, which is hard. A lot of players can't take feedback, and I'm just being honest. Not everybody can. I could, and I think my parents they provided a lot of feedback in other areas. It wasn't always sports. It was other things in life that really challenged me. And so what people don't recognize is college sports and sports in general. Yeah, it tests your physical capabilities, but it tests your mind. It tests your mind, and it tests your emotions. How can you?
I can't agree with you more.
Yeah.
I think that emotion regulation is something we don't talk about enough.
Totally.
Is this something that some of it's innate, right? So some of the stuff you're talking about, but is this something that you had to teach yourself? Is it something that you had to coach yourself? And when you were feeling low and you were making mistakes did you talk yourself out of it? What did that look like?
Oh yeah. I will say this. Gina and Greg, those are my parents. They got to hear me on the phone a lot. I will say that I really remember the first 3 weeks vividly because it was preseason. You're doing 2-a-days. Oh my gosh, you are thrown into it. And I remember calling them all the time, freaking out, being like, I'm not going to play. Somebody's going to play ahead of me. Somebody's going to play ahead of me. And I had those moments where I really did doubt myself. And I was like, I just want people to see, I want them to take a chance. I was in fear a lot of the time that the coaches weren't going to recognize it. They weren't going to see my potential. They weren't going to see the capabilities that I had because I knew innately it was untapped. I knew that, but I was like, I wanted people to see it. I wanted them so badly to see it. And I remember my mom and dad were on the phone and they were both like, I don't know, it was something that they said to me. I still remember this. And they're like, but they do. They were like, but they do. What you're failing to recognize is that you haven't given it enough time. They do. They do. You just need to wait. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, wait. I don't want to wait for this. I don't want to wait to feel good. I don't want to wait to know. I don't want to wait any longer. I just want them to be like, you're playing, you're starting, you're amazing. All of the things that we want as athletes, all of that external validation. But I remember in that moment, I was like, okay, I'm just going to believe that they already think that about me. I literally convinced myself that they believed that about me.
And by the way, like we say it all the time. Sometimes you fake it till you make it.
Totally.
I mean, imposter syndrome, the way we get over it is we pretend. Just pretend for a minute. You'll be fine. Yeah. That's so interesting. And of course, as you're saying what your parents said, I'm like dying to hear, right? I'm like, as a parent, I'm like, please tell me what they said. And they didn't say anything you didn't already know. They reminded you of what you knew. So yeah, that's amazing. And you go on to have a really incredible experience. You have a 32-0 season. You win the SEC. That is very stressful. As a coach who I think back to my most stressful season, it's when my team was at one point, 18-0, heading it, you know what I mean? The more you win, the more you have to win.
Oh, yeah.
What can you say about a season with a team that never loses? What is that like?
I have literal chills thinking about that. That was my junior year of college. That year, what people don't understand, not everybody understands, what some people do and what some people don't, is that sports can change your life. And that year literally changed my life. It changed my life. It changed my life. That I attribute college athletics to where I am now. And that year alone changed my life. And the reason why I'm saying that is this is the whole, fall in love with the process. It's all about the journey and not the destination, but it's true and it's real. And it's hard for people to recognize that unless they have done that, unless they have been in the trenches. And just to take you back just a little bit, is my sophomore year, we were in the trenches. We were in the trenches. There was a lot that had happened on my team specifically. We lost, I think there were 6 or maybe 8. I forget how many people transferred, quit, you name it. So there was, I want to say going into my junior year, I started with about 8 girls, 7 or 8 girls my freshman year, added 1, and then we ended with 3 in my class. And so walking into my junior year, that spring and that summer of sophomore season, that's where the work was. Yes, it was about what we were doing every single day my junior year to win that, but it was actually about what was happening before. And what was happening before is that we decided, I think there was like 7 of us, literally 7 of us left, and 7 or 8. And we had a brand new freshman class coming in. I was going to be a junior. We only have 2 seniors. We only had 2 seniors, a couple sophomores. It was rough. And we decided as a group, as that small group, that we wanted to change the culture of the team. And what were we going to do? What precedents were we going to set for ourselves in order to change it? What were we going to do to go from a losing season to a winning one? What were we going to do to fall in love with the sport again? Because I think that got a little bit lost along the way. And so much of the work that propelled us forward our junior year was actually done in the spring season of my sophomore year and that summer. And a huge piece of this was us getting close. It was dropping our egos at the door, was coming together as a team, and was actually putting the team ahead of ourselves. And that is one of the hardest things to do sometimes as an athlete.
I mean, and we all have egos. That's why we got to where we got. So I need you to break that down a little bit because there's a lot of people that are saying that sounds great, but how do you do it? And you can only speak obviously from your own personal experience, but is it something you have to keep reminding yourselves? What happens when you go off track? Who holds you accountable at that point?
So at that time, we had brought in a sports psychologist. Her name's Scotta Morton. She had started with us our sophomore year, the beginning of it, but really the bulk of the work that we were doing with her was again, that spring season going into summer. And she was with us all the time. We would do trainings before practices. We would do trainings after workouts in our team room, team building exercises, activities, you name it, vision boards, strength exercises, us opening up and being honest about our own vulnerabilities as not only athletes, as people, our self-destructive tendencies and how we can best support each other through that. The biggest thing that I hold true is we actually made a contract. It was a massive, massive contract, like huge. And we put it up in our team room and it was like, like the 10 Commandments almost. It was like that. And we came up with it together with Scotta there. And let me tell you, we followed that to a T. And it took every single one of us being super accountable and having hard conversations. I still remember this when my setter, she would keep us accountable, man. And I loved her for that. And where I resented her before, which is so funny, where I resented her before, I think my freshman, a little bit early sophomore year, is where we ended up connecting. And I got so close with her.
What did you resent about her?
The accountability piece that she hold people accountable.
I love that.
Yes.
And you're right. My first reaction when people try to hold me accountable is, oh no, back it up, sister. And then when I realize that it's to my benefit, I'm like, okay, I'm going to welcome this. That's so interesting. So you guys literally say, let's all buy in.
All bought in.
Yep. You're going to buy in. And then you build this 10 commandments, which I love. And what does that process look like? Is everybody throwing out ideas? Are you sort of agreeing, disagreeing? How do you get to the 10? And where do you even start that?
We were sitting in, again, our team room, a circle, and we were kind of like, we want to have there were a couple of things that went down. We were like, okay, what are our goals for the year? Like, what do we want for the next season ahead? And what type of culture, what precedent, what stage are we going to set for these incoming freshmen where they know that this is it? This is the standard. What are the standards?
Well, what were some that really jump out at you? Is there anything that sort of stands out as being one that's difficult to follow, or were they pretty basic?
I wish I could. If I find that, I will send it to you.
Please do. I'm dying to see it.
I really will. I remember one of them. Okay, so one of them was also about I think it was social responsibility. That was a huge piece of this too, is how we show up on the court. How are we showing up outside of it as well? It was truly a becoming of self through this whole process too. There was so much identity formation between athlete and person and athlete, or student and athlete and student. And one of the standards was actually holding each other. That's the one that rings true to me, is holding each other accountable and having conversations and doing it again, in service of the team. And I had to remember that over and over. I still remember this. This is an example. I was like, it's something so simple, but it does make a difference. We were working out, we were doing a team workout that spring season, and we were doing this ab workout with one of our strength and conditioning coaches. And we were like, okay, 10-pack abs, whatever, everybody. And I kept saying, because spring break was around the corner, and I was like, you guys, spring break, whatever, 10-pack for spring break. And I remember Molly looking at me, my setter, and she was like, this isn't for spring break. She's like, oh, this is for our season. That is the goal. That is the purpose. And yeah, it might feel a little aggressive or an overcorrection, but it was a hard pill to swallow. And I remember in the moment, I was taken aback and a little offended, but I actually sat there that night and I was like, she's right. And I understood, it's like understanding the assignment. Like I understood what she was saying.
I
And
love that.
it wasn't like to be hot, hot 20-year-old girls. I mean, although that's great, and maybe that's a benefit from it, but it's like, no, this isn't about body composition. This isn't about looking good. This is about why we're doing this. Why we're doing this. And it's honestly, it was to win. It was to we had this goal. We had this goal that we wanted to win the SEC. That was it.
So listen, for people who are listening, and I say it all the time, we can simplify it. We've got to come together. We have to put the team over self. I mean, these are team sports, and we have to recognize that individuals cannot do it alone, and it has to be a team thing. This team goes 32-0, undefeated, wins the SEC for the first time. Like, this is a tremendous accomplishment. You said that changed your life. And that sounds, dramatic, but I believe you. And I believe that athletes transform. How did this change your life and transform you then? Aside from winning, because winning is amazing, but you're saying it was the process to win.
It was the process. It made me believe that anything that you buy into fully, like if you can fully surrender to the process, truly the process of becoming, it will become. Like it will, because what the shift is, it's less about the external, the outcome. The outcome will always be a result of what happens internally. And for me, there was a massive internal shift from needing constant external validation to prove myself or to even, prove to the outer world that we were good enough, or that we deserve to be there. But it was proving this thing to ourselves. And the feeling was so intrinsically motivated. Yes, you have extrinsic factors, which is, winning the SEC, or, maybe it was being undefeated in season. Amazing. But the focus was more on what we were trying to do internally. And I'm telling you, that shift, everybody was doing that though. And that's what's so wild. I've never been a part of a group where every single person was focusing on the process of them getting better, of them focusing on just the day-to-day, step-by-step, of strengthening their own sense of self, of having hard conversations, of just being so truly just bought into the process in the here and now, and not jumping 10 steps ahead, really focusing on the game, keeping that pre-game performance routine on a go, being very repetitive, not shying away, not bringing toxicity into the team. Also, strengthening each other. That was another thing. We were so competitive, yet so uplifting. That was the other piece of this. Every practice, we came to work. I don't remember a single practice where we didn't.
It's just incredible to hear this, and it's incredible your perspective. And we all want that, right? We want to have what you're describing. How do you say to coaches and athletes, what's the starting point of this process? Is it, what do you value? What is your purpose? Is it all of these things? Because I have yet to meet an athlete who doesn't want to A, win, B, be a part of something bigger than themselves, all these sorts of things. For people who are saying, okay, great, I hear you, I want that. What's the starting point to start to believe?
I think the biggest thing is it's actually setting a goal. So whatever goal that is, a lot of the times it is this external goal. But what you end up happening is define the goal. What is the goal that everybody wants? And everybody has to want it. If one person doesn't want it, that's where the enemy lies though. It's if two people are not bought in, everybody has to be bought in. It has to be a common goal.
And what if my role is tiny? What if I don't get to play a lot? How do I buy in if I'm not really getting to contribute during games?
And I know that came up a bunch with some of the players that weren't starting, or they were coming in, here and there as utility players. And they had to understand it, which is so hard. And I really don't want to speak for them, but I know from some of their experiences and talking with them and honestly holding a lot of space for it too, because it's so challenging. I want to say this. It doesn't mean that you're not going to feel like you're not going to want those things. It doesn't mean that you're not allowed to feel the way that you feel, that you're not allowed to want to play and start and all of that. Like, that's a motivating force for all of us. We all want that. We all want that. But to recognize that with you buying in and you like giving all that energy into these practices and competing, a healthy competition, competing with our other players in a healthy way, you are literally making the team better. Without them, we wouldn't be where we were, where we are. Like, you need every single person, because if any, I'm like, their role is almost more important. I'm serious. Like, their role is so important because it can be the detriment and it can also be what enhances the team and the bond. And I really want to say this too, they will get a chance. You will get a chance. But what's so powerful is what you create from that. It's the unity, it's the feeling, it's you pushing. By you pushing others to be better, you're pushing yourself to be better, and your day will come.
Yeah, I love that. So here you are. You were not studying to be a therapist. At what point did you recognize that that was your calling?
You know, I was a journalism major. That's another reason why I went to Missouri, Amazing J's school. I wanted to do broadcasts for a second, didn't have the time. So I went into kind of more the advertising PR space. And so I actually graduated with a journalism degree. And I went out into the world, worked for like 2.5 years. I was in corporate PR. I was doing investor relations, got a job in Chicago. Felt pretty unfulfilled, to be honest. And I actually remember this too. I remember my senior year being in class and being like, this doesn't feel right, but I'm so in this. I'm literally about to graduate with a journal. Like, I'll figure it out. It was kind of one of those, I'll figure it out. But I remember thinking, I do remember having this exact thought of being like, I feel like I'm so into like psychology and like the mind and really understanding people and the human experience. And I will say, I think I had a lot of empathy growing up. I just think that's, again, I do feel like that's a bit of how I was wired. Very empathic, very sensitive. I was a very sensitive kid. And it was always there. I always tell this to people too. Even the books I was reading, they were self-help. Those were the only books that would pique my interest. But for some reason, I couldn't make that connection yet. For some reason, I was like, being a psychologist, being a therapist, I was like, no. I was like, that's crazy. Like, why would I want to do that? Like, I denied myself of that for a long time. And it wasn't until I was in the real world working where I was like, I just kept getting this calling. Like, I don't even really have words for it. It was more of this like calling, this feeling that moved through me. And I just kept thinking about junior year. And I kept thinking about college athletics. And I kept thinking about mental health and how my mental health changed drastically from doing so much inner work. And I just remember like sitting there one day and being like, I think I want to become a therapist. And I was like, oh, I would love to work with athletes. Like, I would love to work with athletes. That would just be so cool. There were a lot of sports psychologists, right? And there's incredible sports psychologists. Like, Skada was an incredible sports psychologist of mine. She was amazing. But again, you know, they're focused more on the team and oneness, even doing individual work with you, but it's more about mental performance, the mental performance piece, mental skills. And I was like, okay, but I want to go into the individual psyche. I want to understand why they are the way that they are, their interpersonal relationships and them in the lines, in the arena, but beyond them too. So on a whim, I just applied to one school in Illinois. And I was like, I kind of had this moment. I was like, okay, if it's meant to be, it'll be. Like, I'm meant to do this. And so I applied to Northwestern. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get in. I applied, I got in, and like the rest is history.
Okay. So I work on the mental fitness side, which, I call it prevention. So I help athletes prevent really mental health issues, more performance-based. A lot of what I hear is based on performance. I think we constantly have opinions about ourselves based on our performance. Like, I'm happy if I played well. I'm sad if I played poorly. Like, we use performance in a way that is actually hurting us and not helping. What is the number one thing that you see now working with athletes, and what can people do to not go down that path to get where they are and not continue to have joy?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you do that, because I want to say this too, and that you do this work and that you're in it, because there's so many transferable like skills, and there's just so much crossover in general between mental health, mental performance, or the psyche of, you just as a person day to day, and then the psyche of an athlete, because there's so much identity formation and identity crossover in that. And I think a piece of this is identity, actually. It's this idea that if I've done something wrong or I'm not perfect, then that, for whatever reason, means I've failed. I've failed. And the truth is, obviously, you haven't. You haven't failed. It's how can we, I think for me, it's like, how can I approach it more from the lens of this is what lessons can I learn from this? Like, what is this? It's that growth mindset versus
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
what is this teaching me about myself as an athlete? Like, what is this teaching me? How can this help me instead of hurt me? How can this help me instead of hurt me? But also in your own life, in other ways that you identify yourself, in your interpersonal relationships too. Like, what can this teach me? And it goes, I think there's so many layers. It goes even deeper too, of this feeling that like you're enough. Like you're enough even on your worst days.
Yeah. And do you see more suffering in sports as we continue to throw more money at it? We pay athletes, we open the transfer portals, we've made it looser. For some, it's not better, it's harder. And for some coaches, it is as well. Like, what are we doing to protect our athletes as we continue to build these sports into huge businesses?
Yeah. I've had a lot of conversations about that. I feel like over the past couple of years specifically, because I know there's been so much change there. This is what I believe. I'm not saying every institution is doing this, but I will say this. There's definitely been a shift that's been happening within the mental health space. Mental performance, mental health, it is really a mental health issue at the core of it. And I've seen these universities or even professional teams, put in place having a mental health professional on staff or contracting with mental health professionals who, are very well versed in the, athlete wellness space, or who are mental performance coaches or are sports psychologists. Like, there has to be some mental health literacy here in order to help support these athletes. And I think really making this huge push to focusing on the mental health of the athlete has shifted a bunch. I think we have a long way to go, but I think from an institutional standpoint, that should be at the forefront of every single institution for the system, but as a whole and how that operates, but also for the individual psyche of the athlete too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think about my son is a fifth year basketball player, and early on, he couldn't shoot. He was going through a shooting slump, or, he was struggling with shooting. And it was like, oh, you should consider a sports psychologist. And I have a family of psychologists. And he was like, I'm not going to a psychologist because I can't shoot. Like, that seems ridiculous. Like, I just got to go back to the gym and get on the shooting machine and shoot more shots. And, there is this idea of, and that's why I call it fitness, because we go to the gym for fitness. Like, we get more physically fit, but we don't really get more mentally fit per se. Like, it's a struggle. And I try to say to athletes, think about your physical fitness. Like, you play basketball, but you also go to the gym, you lift weights. Is lifting weights making you a better shooter? Maybe. It's the same thing with the mental fitness piece. Do you need to do mental fitness to become a better volleyball player? I think, try it. Like, it might help. So when you hear from athletes, are you hearing from them after they're already, somewhat in crisis or somewhat facing issues? Or are you hearing from athletes who are like, I feel good right now, but I want to continue to feel good?
I wish it was more preventative. I wish that was the case. I was talking to our group of therapists, we meet on Tuesday morning. So we all met this morning, and the group of us that work specifically with athletes, a lot of us were former athletes as well, actually the majority of us. But we were talking about one of our therapists, Jen, she's amazing. She brought up this idea of, okay, people come in for support, self-discovery, and solutions. So support, solutions, and self-discovery. Now, I would love if every single person came in for self-discovery, right? They were already feeling like they, maybe there were solutions, but they could enhance them. I would love that in an ideal world. But I will say a lot of us athletes, like I think even asking for help is such a hard thing to do. So we will grovel and fight our own brains for as long as we need to, or as long as we can, until we are like, I don't want to say helpless, but until we get to that point where we're like, okay, I really can't like do this on my own anymore. So a lot of people are coming in from a more reactive standpoint where it's like, okay, they do need support. And how can we help find solutions that work for them? How can we help them cope through this too? And then we get to a place where there is just more self-discovery, being had and going on. But I would say it is more reactive.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, just recently, very recently, I got a few college athletes who are playing a lot. And I'm always waiting for the shoe to drop because I'm always thinking, why did you hire me? And I'm hearing more of, I want to find more joy. And I am playing a lot and I do like my teammates and I am an all conference player and my team is doing well. Like everything's going well on paper and I don't have joy. And I feel like there should be joy with all these things. What does that sound like to you?
You forgot your why. You forgot your why. And I think sometimes too, you can get really burnt out. You're going to have that. Like, I think also accepting that you're going to have these moments where that's inevitable. Like, you're going to have your days where you're burnt out. You're going to have your days where you're exhausted. You're going to have your days where you're like, I want to quit tomorrow. I really don't want to go to practice. And it does. It takes everything in you sometimes to go there and do it.
Yeah.
So two things. I always say two things can be true here because I think over-identification can also be a detriment where it is ball or nothing. It's volleyball or I have nothing. And that's this other piece. I'm like, okay, but where can you also foster joy outside of your life too? Where can you also create that so you can bring that into the arena, right? So you're feeling better as you're walking in to the volleyball court because you're finding joy in simple pleasures in your day-to-day. Something as simple as a walk. I mean, everyone used to make fun of me on my team for this. My joy was going to Starbucks. And then it became a team tradition. We all became like these and yeah, like it's a little self-care, but there was something, it wasn't just going to get my coffee at Starbucks. It was the fact that I was walking there. Walking helped clear my mind. It was for my mental health. I just loved it. Like, I just loved going there. And like, I felt like a different sense of community there too. Something different, something new. And I would walk in with my Starbucks all the time. And it was just like my little pick me up before I walked into those doors. And so finding joy outside of it is just as important as finding joy inside of it. So it's a both and here. But I do think remembering why. Why do you play the game? Like, why do you play the game? Why did you fall in love with it in the first place?
Okay, I love that. Okay, there's two topics that I want to talk about before we end. And I do play a game with all of my guests. So we're going to play the game really quick and then go back to a couple of things. The game is very easy. I name two things. You just tell me which one you would prefer.
It's time to play Would You Rather?
Start easy. Hamburger, hot dog.
Hot dog.
Would you rather vacation in the mountains or vacation at the beach?
Mountains.
Would you rather be the MVP on your team or the most improved on your team?
Most improved.
If you could go back and be a college coach, would you rather be a Division I assistant coach or a Division III head coach?
Division I assistant coach.
Would you rather go back to college and play softball or play soccer?
Softball.
Would you rather be the captain of your team but struggle with team morale or be a supportive teammate and not have a leadership role?
Supportive teammate and not have a leadership role.
Okay. Would you rather win a game on a powerful jump serve or win the game on a perfectly executed dig?
Oh, that's tough. Honestly, jump serve.
Great jump serve.
I love jump serve.
Would you rather, in your practice now, would you rather work with a highly talented athlete who's not very motivated or a less talented athlete who's very driven?
Less talented athlete who's very driven.
I knew you were going to say that. Would you rather help an athlete develop a strong growth mindset or assist them in managing and reducing stress?
Can I say both for that one?
I know that one you probably want both.
We'll
let you have both on that.
Both,
okay.
But you know what? Actually, I would say growth mindset because I do feel like managing and reducing stress is also, in a way, you are growing in that too.
Okay. All right, you can do that. Would you rather go for a run or a walk to clear your mind or meditate to focus and reset?
Walk.
I think you said walk already. That makes sense. Would you rather address issues related to athlete burnout or help athletes balance academic and athletic responsibilities?
Burnout.
Okay, burnout's the thing. Yeah, I get it. Would you rather conduct workshops on mental resilience for a whole team or provide one-on-one sessions with an individual athlete?
I love my one-on-one sessions.
You do.
I do.
Okay.
I do.
I personally really, and I do love my one-on-ones, but I love working with a team because when they collaborate and people open up and share, like, I'm like, I could not have said that better than your peer telling you that. So I love when I see teams do their own work together. It always amazes me what people are willing to say when you ask, which is going to bring me back to a couple of things. These are two things that I'm curious about. The first thing is coaches. It's a really, really hard job. It's lonely. It's painful. You get burnout. You give a lot. You get fingers pointed at you, all these sorts of things. What can we do in our field to support coaches in a way that they can carry the work on to the athletes?
That is so tough. I have so much empathy for coaches, especially ones who also are like, I don't know everything. And I think that's the biggest thing. So I think it's a both and here, right? Is recognizing as a coach, and I'm not a coach, so I don't want to speak to this, but recognizing that like there's a willingness to learn always, like being open, which is hard, and receptive to feedback, and us coming in as mental health professionals, as sports psychologists, mental performance coaches, you name it, being able to have that line of communication open with coaches where they're receptive. We're not telling you how to coach by any means, but trying to help you see maybe things that you see from a coaching standpoint instead of like a mental health standpoint. Really coming in and helping you understand like the mental health of a group, how a system works, how group dynamics work as well. And also just things to look for, things to look out for, to be aware of when a player might be struggling. Like it might not be what you think it is. It could be something underneath. It could be something deeper. So how can we lead with more curiosity? I always say being open and curious and compassionate.
Yeah, it's so hard. And I hear from coaches a lot who say, I say to coaches, the best 3 words an athlete can hear is I see you. They want to be seen by you. They want to be coached by you and they want to be seen. And I hear back from coaches who say, I understand that, Linda, but I have 29 guys on this hockey team and I can't see 29 kids every day. And I say, like, you don't have to see them every day, but they need to see each other as well. How would you tell a coach who has a large roster and maybe a Division III school too, where they don't have a staff of 20 people? What would you say to a coach who says, how do I make sure my kids are seen when there's so many of them?
Oh, that's a great question. One thing I will say is you set the tone. I mean, at the end of the day, you are the one creating the culture and fostering that. This is my preference. I'm a very open door policy type of person. So for me, I think for coaches, it's actually just extending the olive branch. It's actually saying, I am approachable and you can come talk to me, right? Because I agree, it's not the coach's responsibility to every single day go check in on every single person. It's the athletes as well. So a big piece of that too is empowering them to have a voice, empowering them to talk about their needs and how they feel with the coach. I think the biggest thing is not feeling like they're afraid of their coaches. That's a challenge, but not feeling afraid. And I know that's a hard balance to strike sometimes with coaches too, because they want to create their own boundaries as well. But I think what players are really looking for is that connection or that relationship. And it doesn't have to be, we're besties. It doesn't have to be like that. There is a power dynamic. There is a shift. They are an authority figure. They are. And we have to respect that. But they also set that precedent too. It's like, can we lean in a little bit more? Can we open ourselves up with just a little bit more there to foster just a better connection, a better connection?
Love that. I agree. And the connection piece is so important. But actually, you said something that I hadn't really thought about before, and I love it. And that is, do put the onus back on the athlete. Because if you say to the athletes, my door is open and they don't go through the door, like you have to have an environment that says it is very safe for you to walk in here. And I know as coaches, we say that, but we have to mean it. And I think there's a sense of fear when you have the currency an athlete wants, and that's playing time. And if I go in and say I'm feeling a certain way, and I also want you to be confident I can play on Friday night, it's a little sketchy. The last topic I wanted to ask you about is something I see a lot with, and I coach boys right now, but I coach a lot of females in teams, and that is jealousy. I don't see jealousy, or I don't see the same form of jealousy with boys as girls, although I think we just call it something different. What do you say to athletes who are jealous and there's shame around it? I was a jealous person. And once I got rid of the shame of it and realized it could drive me, I used my jealousy to my benefit. But I suffered as a jealous person for a really long time because I didn't want anyone to know. What do you say to people who feel jealous, and how do you kind of work through that?
Thank you for sharing that too. I feel like I really, really appreciate that, because that's such a hard, that is the biggest thing I'm recognizing too with so many of my clients. There's an unwillingness to accept uncomfortable emotions and uncomfortable feelings. And it's like, no, envy, it's a real feeling. You can be envious of somebody, and it's okay. It's okay to hold that. It's okay to notice it. It's more about noticing it and recognizing that it's okay to feel that way, but it's about what you do with that. Can you utilize it to drive you? Can you utilize it in a way like where you become the best version of yourself because of it? I think there's a way to let that drive you, but I also want to highlight that I try to help people remember this too, is that no one athlete and no one person is the same, even if you're in the same position. So what somebody might have and can bring to the table, you have something unique. You have your own unique footprint. You have something that you can bring to the table. It's not going to look the same. It's just not. So it's a part of that too, is re-identifying with what you already know about you, like what it is that you're really good at. Where can we foster that? Where can we strengthen that? So you remember that about yourself. You remember those innate qualities that you own and that you harness, because I guarantee you the person next to you is like, dang, I want what she has.
Yeah. Yeah. We see that a lot. Was there jealousy on that SEC championship team at first? Is that something you guys even discussed in your commandments, or was that an unwritten kind of thing?
Yeah, implicit, I'm thinking like versus explicit. Yeah, there was my sophomore year, there was. I will say that. My freshman and sophomore year, there definitely was. I think there's a difference between the way that we positioned this, actually. And I know Scotta, our sports psychologist, worked a lot individually with players who struggled with this too. So definitely work on this individually, because the truth is sometimes it does suck. Like, I don't want to sugarcoat that. Like, that feeling sucks. But you have to find that power within you because it exists. It exists.
No, I love that, because honestly, I say to people all the time, like, if you're a quitter or you're jealousy, I'm your girl, because I know exactly what both of those feel like. And I love that you said that's something to work on it. It's okay to tell people you're working on it, right? Like, I mean, people are like, oh, that's cool. You're working on your jealousy. Cool.
100.
I'll do that too, right?
I was going to say this 100%. Oh, with this specifically, what was happening freshman, sophomore, and I'm not saying it was happening all the time. Like, I call it healthy competition versus unhealthy competition, where unhealthy competition to me is like, there's so much ego involved that we're not afraid who we're taking out in the process, essentially. Okay. We're not afraid of who we're harming. And ultimately you end up harming yourself. Okay. But then you have this healthy competition where it's drive, it's competitive, there's grit. And it's okay. There is envy, but it's harnessed in a way that everybody is doing their part. Like, you're creating something collectively, again, that is bigger than yourself. And so you are part of it. You feel it and it drives you. I think the thing is, it drives you. It doesn't inhibit you, and it can make you a better person. It doesn't play on your insecurities, right? Or other people too playing on your insecurities or or doing unjust harm in that way.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your perspective. I have to tell you, I've taken so many notes. It's been so interesting. I always like to talk to people who are athletes who faced hard things. And I think you really express to us so many things that we forget to think about. And that is, it's still bigger than ourselves. And in the end, we'll still be so proud of ourselves if we recognize that. So thank you for that. And thank you for sharing with us. And we appreciate it so much.